we need to recognize that we're in a very dangerous situation. And what's at risk is actually the future of civilization itself. Because if we do not get the brakes on climate change, it may become unmanageable. And if it becomes unmanageable, probably in the form of food scarcity, we could see civilization begin to break down. We know now that we have failing states, a number of failing states in the world, and each year that list gets longer. At some point, the growing number of failing states translate into a failing global civilization, and that's the risk we face. So I think we have to move very... December 7th, 1941, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, surprise attack, very successful. They managed to sink almost half of our Pacific fleet before we could respond. 1 month later, January 6, 1942, President Roosevelt, in his State of the Union address, annual State of the Union address, laid out U.S. arms production goals because we were now at war, both in Asia and in Europe. He said, we're going to produce 45,000 tanks, 60,000 planes, thousands of ships. And people couldn't imagine arms production on that scale. But what Roosevelt and his colleagues knew was that at that time, the largest single concentration of industrial power in the world was in the U.S. automobile industry. Because even during the Depression decade of the 1930s, we were making at least 3 million cars a year. So after his State of the Union address, when he laid out the arms production goals, he called in the leaders of the automobile industry. And he said, because you guys represent such a large share of our industrial capacity, we're going to rely heavily on you to help us reach these arms production goals. And they said, well, Mr. President, we're going to do everything we can, but it's going to be difficult to produce cars and all these arms too. He said, you don't understand. We're going to ban the sale of cars in the United States. And that's exactly what happened. And so the automobile industry had no option but to produce tanks and planes and ships. And in the end, we exceeded every one of those arms production goals. In the end, we didn't produce 60,000 planes, we produced 229,000 planes, fighters, bombers, reconnaissance planes, troop transports, cargo transports. I mean, even today, 70 years later, it's difficult to imagine producing 229,000 planes, but we did it. And if we did that then certainly we can restructure the energy economy today.